In a world where we crave attaining infinite knowledge over honoring one's belief and tradition, a world where knowledge is power, who owns the rights to our body when you die? Is it that 22-year-old scientist from Stanford University, or is it your family? With that being said, let us begin the story of the Kennewick Man. The Kennewick Man was an individual whose remains were discovered on a bank of the Columbia River in Kennewick, Washington in July 28, 1996. He was one of the most intact skeletons to ever be uncovered. Native Americans claimed the skeleton was a part of their community, an ancient ancestor, if you will, who would be of significant importance in regards to their beliefs and values. Native Americans value culture, which has been ripped right out of their hands for centuries over science. The body deserved to be buried and laid to rest for the rest of eternity. They believed the body did not belong to scientists, rather to them. Genetic testing would settle this argument, proclaimed the scientists. These remains could be future for science. With more understanding of history and the human body, scientists could potentially rule the world. But the Native Americans will not stand for this. With genetics off the table, they have turned to anthropology to attempt to deduce from whom these remains belong. One thing that was done with the Kennewick Man remains was the examination of the bones. Researchers examined the skull size as well as the posture and possible damages for regular toil and fighting. They found that the skull does not match the majority of skulls they have on record from centuries later. The Kennewick Man had most likely only seen one real battle, as there was a spot where it looked that he had taken a spear too. Other than that, the Kennewick Man lived a normal life as he was walking erect and confident. This would mean the Kennewick Man was fully accepted by the people he lived with. With this information, we can begin to judge this on the relationship that the Native American had with the Americans. The new white settlers did not all like the Native Americans. They found them to be savage and not well cultured. This would, of course, lead to policies in order to make them more civilized. From the strenuous relationships, you can gauge that the Native Americans would not take too well to another person from outside attempting to change the way their tribe functioned. The final thing to consider would now, of course, question, is there a possibility that the remains belong to some other people inhabitant of the U.S.? Here we will consider that the theories of how the Americans were first inhabited. The standard theory here is that of the Clovis first. The theory states that the first migration of the Americans was done during the Ice Age by the people of Russia via the Ice Bridge. The second most plausible theory would be that of the Pacific coast, stating that some immigrants came as early as 1,500 years ago in a boats due to the low sea levels. If you combine these two theories, there is high possibility that these two people converged, as many of the Clovis artifacts were found throughout the Americas, bar a few locations. This would mean that there was only one race of people that inhabited the New World, once more landing to the idea the ownership of the Kennewick Man belongs to the Native Americans. The courts awarded the rights of the Kennewick Man remains to the Native Americans. I guess it's true that the knowledge is power, but only if man knows the facts not to bother with.